Good afternoon, class. How are you guys doing? Are you enjoying attending the classes from home? I guess most of you like the school going online, right? But it sucks when you have to teach classes mostly unresponsive and less engaging than in person. All right, let's start. Let's resume. So we stopped here at a mole, right? Uh, Yeah, this was just an IB's news segment. You guys are most likely already familiar with how uh, Nvidia has been one of the most profitable stocks in recent times, and it it has become one of the most powerful companies in the world. So I guess that is not news for you. Most of you are probably already familiar, and some of you might already, you know, might have its stocks or do trading. Is there anyone uh, in the class who do trading regularly? Share trading, stock trading? Nobody?
Yeah, I just
I do.
passively invest. I don't really like do day trading though.
Okay. Yeah, so there are a few in the class. Yeah, so you guys are already familiar with the stock market and Nvidia. Let's continue with the theories. So we had to start modern firm-based theories. So in the classical country-based theories, the unit of assessment was country. Here, after Second World War, um, MNCs rose, right? The concept, the phenomena of multinational corporations or multinational enterprises started rising, and the earlier classical theories were unable to explain the increasing importance of intra-industry trade that started happening. So, what does it mean? So, before that, people were kind of, it was kind of a barter system that if Britain is good in textiles and France is good in wines, then Britain will sell textiles to France and in return will buy wines or alcohol products from France, right? But after the Second World War, after the rise of multinational corporations, scholars were perplexed. They were confused as to why US, which is already good in producing automobiles, producing cars, why do Americans still buy, or why does America still import cars from Germany and Japan? Because we should actually sell cars to them and import something or buy something from them which we are not good at. So why are we still doing the trade in the same industry with the same products despite being good at those products? And it was not just in automobiles, it was evident, it was visible in so many other industries, like most of the industries, right? So that is why scholars started coming up with firm-based theories to explain these phenomenon. Okay, so first theory in modern firm-based theory is product life cycle theory. So product life cycle theory is visible even today. So what happens is that um, have have you guys ever seen a VCR? Do you know what VCR is? Anybody in the class who has heard the term or seen VCRs? Floppy disk. Floppies you must have seen, right? No? Am I too young for that?
Yeah, those
So
the square things with the circle in the middle and that you put into a computer.
yeah, there were small black
Yeah.
squares uh, before. So you all have seen DVDs and CDs, right? The floppies were before that. VCRs were even before that, and these floppies had very low storage, very little storage. I don't remember, a few MBs, right? Then CDs came, which had like 700 MB storage, and then DVDs came, which had much more storage, and then pen drive or USB drives, and now we all use cloud storage, right? So at that time, so this theory, when this was formulated or you not formulated, like proposed, was 1960s. At that time, most of the innovation used to take place in US, in the Western world, in Europe and US, but even in that, mostly in US, right? So a new product would come up, say VCR or floppy, or say at that time like telephones, or telegraph or something. A new product would take birth in US, and as the demand for the product increases, it starts getting exported to other parts of the world, mostly to developed nations. So when the product is new, it is expensive, and there are very few firms, probably one or two, only one or two firms in the industry which are making that product. Okay, when it gains a little popularity and demand increases, then it starts getting exported. But initially, it will be exported mostly to the developed nations like Europe, Australia, Singapore. At that time, that time Singapore was not that rich, but Western world. And then more competitors enter the industry. They also start making the product. Slowly, they start making the product in other nations as well. Like other nations, firms also enter the industry, and then uh, maturity stage comes where there are a lot many competitors now. The price gets almost stable, stagnated, and it becomes a mass market. And at that time, because now the price becomes the main point of competition, main focus. So most of the production moves to low cost locations. Initially, it was expensive, so it was being produced only in US or Western world because there were less number of competitors. Not everybody could afford it. It was not a mass market. But when it becomes mass market, when the brand value gets diluted and it's the price point which becomes the main focus, main point of competition, then they move the production gets shifted to low cost locations, uh, East Asia or Latin America or something. Okay. And hence, the nation, say US, which gave birth to that product, which was initially exporting that product, in the end becomes importing nation of the same product, right? But By that time, US has already moved to the next innovation, right? So by the time declining phase of floppy comes, US has already moved to CDs and DVDs. The US has already started manufacturing CDs and DVDs. The takeoff period has maybe even passed for those products, and the growth period is there, and it is moving towards the maturity phase of the CDs and DVDs. The cycle continues, and by the time CDs and DVDs see their declining phase, Western world has already moved to pen drives, so USB drives, right? By the time Asian countries and or developing nations start manufacturing CDs and DVDs there on the mass scale, there is some new innovation coming out of the Western world. Do you see what is happening? What does it show? The product life cycle theory. It basically shows the magnitude as well as the direction of the movement of the product, right? And it was demonstrated by this scholar, Japanese scholar in East Asia. And again, we are talking about the mid 20th century. At that time, China was not the China of today. It was struggling and going through the cultural revolution phase, the Great Leap. It was not at all interacting with the outside world except communist countries. So East Asia was very different at that time. Even Vietnam was not Vietnam of today. So they showed this. The scholar showed this product life cycle theory in East Asia, which he gave the name flying geese paradigm. So we all have seen birds flying in this V shape, right? There is a leader, then there is first row, then second row, then third row, right? So Japan was the fastest developing country in East Asia at that time, the leading country. It rose very quickly after the bombardment of Second World War with the help of Western world, of course. US had a major role to play in the comeback of Japan. So Japan, say, initially started producing garments at a mass scale. And by the time the product life cycle theory or the life cycle of garment gets completed in Japan, Japan has uh, mastered the art of producing textiles at a mass scale. It moves its focus to higher end industry or more technical industry like steel, and the production of the garments moved to the first tier of the flying geese paradigm, which is, uh, say, that time was Hong Kong, Singapore, Korea, and Taiwan. So these were called tiger economies, or tiger economies were Korea, South Korea, of course, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore, which you can still see are the most developed nations, one of the most developed nations in the world as well as Asia. And there were tiger cub economies. So these were four were tiger economies. And then there were tiger cub economies, which were like Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, uh, Philippines, and all. Okay. So garment production moves through tiger economies. Japan shifts its focus to steel. And by the time steel completes its life cycle Japan has mastered the art of steel, then Japan quickly moves to making TVs at that time, popular TVs. And the NIEs, which is newly industrializing economies, NIE is newly industrializing economies. They move their focus to producing steel, and the production of garments moved to curb economies like Indonesia, Malaysia. Okay, so on and so forth. So Japan increasingly keeps moving to more complex products, more technical products, and as the life cycle of the products completes, the production of the product keeps moving to lower cost locations. Right? Do you see what is happening here? Right? So this theory makes sense. You can still today see this a lot. Like AI originated in Western world, then slowly other countries like first China jumped onto the AI. It immediately came up with DeepSeek and great LLM models, and then slowly other countries are catching up. Like India just held its AI summit last 3 days, New Delhi, right? But they are still behind. So product life cycle is still evident today to a certain extent, but not completely. Why? Because it is ethnocentric in nature. At that time, most of the innovations used to come out of Western world and mostly US. But nowadays, you can see that a lot of innovations are coming out of other locations as well, especially China, Japan, Singapore, and all. They are coming up with really great products, which are sometimes even better than Western products. Like for example, electric vehicles, uh, like Chinese cars, BYD cars, and all are said to be even better than Tesla and other EV vehicles in the West. I haven't used them, but I've heard. So this is why the product life cycle is not that true today. Because nowadays we have the phenomena of born digital firms and born global firms. So born global firms basically mean that a firm, when it takes birth, simultaneously it starts its operations in more than one country. That is born global firm, right? So nowadays, say I start a firm, I have a startup, and at the same time, at the launch of my company, I have my operations in US, India, China, Brazil, suppose, right? So it's a born global firm that I'm catering to customers in multiple parts of the world, and born digital firms, basically, which means that a firm is mainly working on, like e-commerce website, or mainly on an internet platform. So if it's a born digital firm, automatically most of the born digital firms are born global firms, because they are basically a service provider on internet, so they can cater to a global audience uh, right from the beginning, right? So that is why the product life cycle is not that true today as it was 5 decades or 6 decades earlier. Then we have new trade theory. Now this is very interesting, and the group that is going to present today, group 2, they have also uh, they will also show example of new trade theory in their presentation. So Paul Krugman said that why do we need international trade? Why do we need international business? So he gave two reasons that why international trade is necessary in many cases. So first reason was economies of scale. Do we all understand the meaning of economies of scale? Have we heard this term before? Can anybody explain what do you mean by economies of scale? I think it should be fairly you know familiar word, a familiar phrase to most of you. Guys, I don't need to repeat that participation as points in this class. So please respond if you know the meaning.
You said the meaning of economies of scale?
Yes.
Yeah, so basically it's like the more business grows, the typically the cheaper the cost of goods sold become.
Yes. The per unit cost decreases as the inputs increase. The per unit cost of production, right? The more we produce, the lesser is the cost per unit for the business, right? So that is economies of scale. I can also demonstrate um, by calculations maybe next time, by showing a empirical example if it's not clear, but it should be intuitive that the more we produce, the per unit cost decreases, right? And the second reason he gave was first more advantage. So, can you think of any example where international trade, without international trade, the economies of scale would not be possible, or a firm or an industry needs to do international trade or should have global operations, otherwise, it won't exist? Does any example come to your mind? So take the example of, say, SpaceX or astronauts. You might have heard that so and so firm is sending some astronaut or some space tourist to space. These big businessmen, billionaires, they sometimes like to do that. They like going to space. I think one of the famous singers or someone also went to space last year. Uh, I don't remember the name. Some female singer, right? Or they go deep sea, tourism. I think Katy Perry, I guess, she went. So what happens in these industries now? They require a lot of capital, right? So to function, to operate, if you have to send, say, um, one airship to space, you need a minimum capital to break even, right? You need, like, say, I need to send at least 5 people to space to break even for this, one trip. And because this is such a niche business, like not every rich person is interested in going to space, you need global customers, right? So maybe I have an opening for 5 people till May. So two would be Americans who would be interested in going, but then I need more people, and maybe one from Europe shows interest, one from, say, Africa shows interest, one from, say, Latin America shows interest. So if until and unless I don't have global business in that industry, that industry cannot function. My business cannot function. And this is just one example of economies of scale. There are so many others that, you know, to break even or for the industry to exist, there has to be international trade. There has to be, economies of scale. Otherwise, the business won't exist. And in many of these businesses, you also need first mover advantage. Like, for example, AI, say, the first firm that became popular with the LLM was OpenAI, right? It's an American firm. And despite China trying its best and despite other countries trying to catch up, it is American firms still have lead, you know, Claude AI, the Notebook LM, and that is because they had the first mover advantage. Or say Airbus and Boeing. Um, One of the reasons why there is no third firm in airplane industry. So we know that Airbus and Boeing are the only two firms. It's like a duopoly which are operational in civilian aircraft uh, industry, right? So Boeing is which country's firm?
France.
Boeing.
Oh, would it be America?
Boeing is American. Airbus is
French.
it's headquartered in France, but it's backed by European Union, right? And
Yeah.
there is no third firm, no major third firm which has any significant market share in uh, aircraft industry, right? So why there is no other major third firm? Because say there is say suppose demand of 300 aircrafts a year, global demand, So some would be ordered by some Indian airlines, some Thai airlines, Japanese airlines, African airlines, right? Now, each firm needs to sell at least 120 aircrafts a year to break even. Okay, because it needs a lot of capital, right? So Airbus needs to sell at least 120 each year to break even. Boeing also needs to sell at least 120 each year to break even. Is there any scope for the third firm to enter? Because if a third firm enters and all three of them sell 100 each, none of them will be able to break even, right? So, first mover advantage helps because Boeing was the first firm. Then European Union immediately backed Airbus, supported Airbus through capital and everything they wanted, so that they have a competitor to America's Boeing. And because these industries require very high capital, so a third firm could not enter. And the market basically is duopoly. Even though China, Japan, and these countries would have wanted to have their own firm, uh, you know, aircraft firm as a competitor to US and Europe. So, first mover advantage plays a big role, right? Then returns to scale. Returns to scale means it's basically like economies of a scale. So, when you uh, increase the input, does the per unit cost decreases? uh, then it's increasing returns to scale. If the per unit cost remains the same, then constant returns to scale. If the per unit cost or output starts decreasing when you increase input, then decreasing returns to scale, which you can sometimes see in agriculture. So what happens in these developing nations, because the land holdings are small, so say just 2 hectare land, and the whole family, say 10 people, are working. So the 10 people, the whole family owns just 2 hectare land, and the land just requires 3 people's work, but the other 7 do not have jobs. So they also start working on the same land. And when the returns, in these cases, instead of the returns increasing because now more people are working on the same land, the returns actually start decreasing because the land does not require that many people. So it only creates chaos. But yeah, in most of decreasing returns to scale is a rare phenomenon. Generally, when you increase the input, either your returns would increase or remain constant, right? So that basically connects to economies of scale. And new trade theory explains. So the question at the beginning of the lecture, that why do US, Germany, and Japan trade in cars, even though all of them are good producers of cars, then why do they still allow imports of other nations' cars? Is because even though there may not be significant difference in the quality of cars produced by US, Germany, and Japan, the trade is beneficial because it gives customers more options. So it keeps the producers of your nation on their toes for competition. So if there were only American firms producing cars, say 3 or 4 or 5 companies, then they won't have that much pressure to perform well or keep innovating as much they have when you allow German cars and Japanese cars as well in your country, because first that gives customers more options, and American firms constantly feel the heat, they constantly feel the pressure to be competitive. Otherwise, German or Japanese cars will take more market share, right? And it also promotes the idea of strategic trade policy. Strategic trade policy means that sometimes you need to do international trade, not because that trade is beneficial for you economically, but because for strategic reasons. What are the strategic reasons? Say, for example, China or India. So this war started, Russia-Ukraine war, right? 4 years, almost 4 years going to be next month. The whole Western world put sanctions on countries, put sanctions on Russia, and then put sanctions on countries which were doing trade with Russia, or buying oil from Russia. But China, because of communist ideology, has always had good relations with Russia, wants to keep good relations with Russia. India also wants to, monkey balance. It has always had good relations with Russia. So these countries did not stop buying oil from Russia because of strategic trade policy, that they want to keep Russia happy, uh, to prove that we are not in anybody's team. We are neither with, like India, for example, it tries to show that we are not, neither in America's team nor in Russia's team. We are neutral. Or, for example, say defense products, fighter jets and other, tanks and all. So many countries produce good defense products. France produces good defense products. Russia produces good defense products. China, US. So India deliberately buys from all of them to keep everyone happy. Even though, say, suppose it has bought five fighter jets from US, and now US is saying that we are giving you good price for tanks as well. So buy tanks also from us. But India might say that no, we want to buy tanks from France or Russia because we want to give them trade as well. We want to give those countries as well some trade so that we have good geopolitical relations with all the countries. So sometimes you do trade for strategic reasons, maybe to keep to make the other country happy or to piss off some other country. You know, uh, say China would say that, you know, I will buy more oil from Venezuela or Iran if US doesn't sign the trade deal. You know, suppose I'm just giving a hypothetical example. So new trade theory says that sometimes you do international trade just for strategic reasons and not for economic reasons. Then Michael Porter. Have you heard the name Michael Porter before? Michael, okay. Michael Porter's, if you take, not if you take, all of you will take business policy and strategy because that is a compulsory course for all of you in your senior year. So you will come across this name again. You will read his article and some theories. So Michael Porter gave this diamond of competitive advantage where he tried to explain what actually makes a country attractive for foreign investment. Why would other countries invest in a country? So first reason is factor endowments. So a country could have some positive benefits or some strength in certain factor endowments. That factor endowment could be either natural resources, so like rare earth metals. You know which country uh, refused to sell rare earth metals recently to US? There's a lot of controversy on that. So China, because rare earth metals are used in semiconductors, chips and all. So China was saying that if you do not share technology with us, with our firms, Chinese firms, then we would not sell rare earth metals and hence you won't be able to make GPUs. So the factor endowment could be either natural resources, location, like if I have to say sell to East Asia, I might make my headquarters in certain country which has favorable location to all the nearby countries, say Singapore. From there I can access Indonesia, Malaysia, China, Korea, Japan. So location could be a favorable advantage or skilled labor or some technological know-how, right? Uh, like Philippines, India, some African countries like Kenya, Ghana, they all have very skilled labor. So the youth there is very educated and they are ready to work at lower wages than American workers, right? So that is favorable factor endowment. Then demand conditions. So Ghana, Kenya, these countries, the African countries, have much more population than uh, Nordic countries, Scandinavian countries, right? Can you name some Nordic or Scandinavian countries?
Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Iceland.
Norway, yeah, yes. I think Iceland is not, but yeah, Norway, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, yes, right. So these countries have very low population, say 1 million, 2 million. I don't know, I don't remember the exact one, but they're pretty sparsely populated countries. But still, Apple, Samsung, they have more chances of opening their store in these Nordic or Scandinavian countries than many African countries, despite having far more population, because the demand conditions are different. The people in these countries, Nordic and Scandinavian countries, they have more demand because their per capita income is more. They can afford those phones, those expensive phones, right? So maybe a certain country in Africa has 10 million population, but maybe still less than 100,000 people can afford $1,000 phone. But in, say, Sweden or Denmark, despite having this 3 million population, maybe more than 1 million can afford iPhone and they are interested in buying that. So demand conditions also play a huge role. Then people should be, they should demand sophisticated products as well. So even within US, if a new technological product, a cutting edge IT product, you have more probability of selling that product in California than say Wyoming or Montana or Iowa. Your customers there are more sophisticated in California. They like trying new products. They are tech savvy. They are more educated. Right. So demand conditions also play a huge role in making a country attractive or unattractive. Then related or supporting industries. Related or supporting industries basically mean that, um, say, if I am a FMCG company and I want to enter Philippines, I need to know, because my products will be transported um, via road and via plane and all. I want to know that how is the infrastructure there? How supporting industry is infrastructure. I mean, one of the supporting industries is infrastructure. So, like here in US, I've seen that if you drive car, you can easily cover 60 to 70 miles an hour, especially if you're out of the main city. Once you exit the city on highway or suburban areas, you can easily cover 60 to 70 miles an hour, which is like 100 kilometers or a little over 100 kilometers, right? But when I go to India, due to the condition of roads, uh, generally you would cover 60 to 70 kilometers, which is like 40 to 50, 40 miles or 50 miles. I mean, now the roads are improving there. Some of the new highways and expressways are much better. But generally, uh, the speed is slow. And if my products have to cover long distances, say 500 kilometers, 500 miles, or 600 miles, or something. And my products are such that they might, rot, or I need to fulfill the demand quickly. My customers want the products quickly, and I have no way via train or via air to send my products, and road is the only way through which I can send. Then I should know what is the status, what is the quality of supporting industries. If I want to open an automobile factory in a country, I should know that how is the rubber industry there for tires, how is the tire industry, rubber industry, how is the steel industry in that country, from where can I source my steel for my vehicles. So it's also a self-fulfilling thing that once you open an automobile factory, then steel industry and rubber industry also benefit. So it's a two-way thing, right? Your related and supporting industries also grow, and to grow, you should have good relating and supporting industries as well, right? And successful industries tend to be grouped in clusters in countries. So, like in US, in Silicon Valley, most of the tech firms in US are clustered in Bay Area in California, right? Most of the auto industries, where in US, which area in US is famous for auto industries?
Detroit.
Yes, Detroit, right? That region has historically been famous for auto industries. Why? Because the relating and supporting industries, they get accumulated there. Then relating and supporting industries could also mean, um, the indirect economy that's created uh, due to companies. Say in a region, if 50 or 100 companies come and open their offices in a certain region, then indirect economy gets created through food services there, entertainment facilities. If there are going to be 5,000 and 10,000 people working within 2 or 3 miles, they would also want to hang out for parties, for get-togethers, for food, for transportation, say Uber or Lyft. And we will see this in the future chapters as well, that when an investment comes and we say that, say Google will open office in Manila, and Google will hire 5,000 people. So when you quote the number of jobs created, you won't say that 5,000 jobs will be created in Manila due to Google's entry. No. Indirect number of jobs are also created in at least equal number, if not more. So 5,000 jobs will be created directly because of Google hiring them, but 5,000 will also get jobs through food services, through transportation, through other, entertainment means there. So indirect number of jobs and indirect economy also gets created in equal amount, if not more. So that is also kind of relating and supporting industry. Then fourth reason that he gave was rivalry. Fourth fourth angle of the diamond is rivalry. And rivalry plays a huge role. So for a country to develop, for an economy to grow fast, rivalry is very important. US is US because the firms here are so competitive. And one example is, say, Google. say OpenAI. Uh, OpenAI came up with ChatGPT almost 3 years ago. Do you think Google could never have thought of such an AI engine, despite having the best brains of the world, despite having the best facilities, best money and everything they had? But nobody in Google could ever thought of coming up with something like ChatGPT. Either they couldn't think of it, or even if they thought of it, they dropped the idea because what whose business would ChatGPT eat into? Google's own business. Like till 3 years ago, everybody used to say, if you don't know something, just Google it. And now where do you go to search something? I mean, I still use Google, but now people say that just go to ChatGPT and find the answer. So whose earnings, whose business model is it eating? Google's, right? So if Google would have come up with ChatGPT, at least in the short run, it would have eaten into its own business model. I mean, in the long run, yeah, even ChatGPT is coming up with ads now. You might have heard it was in the news a few days ago, and I knew I have been talking about it for a long time with my friends that I know for certain that ChatGPT will come up with ads. It's obvious, and now they just announced it a few days ago. So yeah, in the long run, Google would have recovered its money because they would have started showing ads on their own AI engine, just like Google. So it wouldn't have made any difference. But in the short run, it would have eaten into its own business model. What is the Google's business model? You know, have you heard of SEO, search engine optimization? Anybody knows what is search engine optimization?
Ads?
So how Google ranks the results. So when you type something, you don't generally go till third or fourth page, right? You generally visit the websites on the first page and maximum second page, right? So the ranking of the pages, page rank. So this is all I am explaining, that how rivalry makes a country attractive. So US is US because of the cutthroat competition it has in its firms, right? You won't see this crazy competition in any other country, maybe China or European Union, India or Japan, but US has the most competition, and that is why it's the most innovative. So Google has two ways of earnings. So Google claims that it does not rank its search results based on money. So say suppose I write an article on Roman history, Roman Empire, and suppose I want that if anybody types Roman Empire, um, the first result should be my essay, my website. But Google says that it does not rank its results based on money, but based on relevance. And how it calculates relevance related to search words, it's a complex calculation. We don't need to go into that, but just understand that it claims that it ranks its search results, shows its search results based on relevance and not money. Okay. It has two ways of earning money through ad. One is AdWords and second is AdSense. So AdWords you must have noticed this when you type something, say you typed editing, then it shows sponsored results. Okay, so whichever firm will bid the highest for that search word. Say suppose Google opens tender for the word editing, and whichever firm will bid the highest, those two or three firms or four firms will get to show their ads in the sponsored results section, and people would know that this result is sponsored. But below that, these websites, they are not sponsored, they are based on relevance as Google claims it. Okay, so Grammarly, Fiverr, and Canva, uh, you would also customize it according to which region you want to show your result in. Say I want to show my result in India or China, and what time of the day do I want to show my result. All that you can customize. So this is AdSense, and this is AdWords. Oh, sorry, this is AdSense, and the previous one was AdWords. Yeah, that was AdWords because uh, the word, the particular phrase or word, you have to bid for that term for those particular words, right? So this is AdWords. You buy that word uh, for your sponsored result, and this is AdSense where you see the results on websites, right? So Google and the website both gets the earnings. So AOL will also share the earning with Google, and Toyota would bid for the advertisement on this website, right? So we see these advertisements. So these are the two ways. So now if on ChatGPT, uh, you don't uh, you don't scroll through the links, right? You get the result immediately written in the form of a paragraph or an essay. So you don't need to sort through websites. So if you're not visiting the websites, you're not opening the links. So you're basically not contributing to the Google's earnings or the website's earnings, right? Because they get their earnings based on the number of links, the number of clicks, how many clicks they get. But if you're not opening the website, you are not clicking it, then it's eating into Google's earnings, right? So that is why that could have been one of the reasons. I mean, it's a speculation. We don't know why Google could not come up with something like ChatGPT before OpenAI. But it's a speculation that that could have been one of the reasons why they did not pick up this idea, did not, work on this idea. Because some employees could have recommended uh, to work on this idea. They have the best brains in the world. So this is about a rivalry. And if any one of you is content creator here, I don't know whether you guys have your YouTube channel or not, or you only make videos for TikTok. But if there is any content creator here, then you can use both AdSense and AdWords on your YouTube channel. So one, you would show ad for your YouTube channel on other YouTube videos. And second is you would get ad on your YouTube channel by other YouTube videos and other channels, which will give you earning, right? So you could use both if you have your YouTube channel and you create content. So what is the government role in this trade theories? How does government influence? So government can influence through tariffs and subsidies, which we will see in next chapter, and it's one of the trending topics nowadays: tariff, subsidies, and sanctions. Government can also influence through, you know, promoting certain products, or discouraging certain products for any reasons, for strategic reasons. Say, suppose government wants to improve the nutrition of its people, so it can promote that, uh, eat more protein based diet. We will subsidize protein based, or it will ask its farmers to grow certain crops, or not grow certain crops, or not export certain crops. So whenever there is scarcity of certain food items in the country, governments ban exports. So last year, I guess, Indian government banned the export of onions because there was scarcity of onions in the country, right? And nowadays it is promoting millets because they are more nutritious. So Indian government is promoting millets a lot. So government can influence the international trade through several ways, uh, many means, by investing in infrastructure also. It can make the country attractive for investment. So yeah, this is government role, and we will see all the ways how government influences international trade in the next chapter. So we'll see that in detail. That's right. All right. So group two, are you ready? Who's gonna share a screen from group two? Yes.
Okay. Okay. I'll start it off. So we did chapter 6 and the opening and closing cases. So the opening case for chapter 6 was the rise of Taiwan. And to give you a little bit of a summary, it talked about Taiwan's and their economic struggles through the 1950s. The government placed tariffs on imports and limited amount of foreign goods imported to raise revenue and product producers. They only exported agricultural products, and this eventually led to low economic growth and trade deficits. And in the late 1950s, the Taiwan's government changed their economic policy and became open to international trade. They also removed import licensing requirements, and they made their exports cheaper, and their tariff rates for importing goods also lowered. The foreign international multinationals invested in Taiwan as well. As a result, the economy for Taiwan propelled forward. Taiwan now benefits more than most countries from globalization. Most trade dependent and wealthy nations. It's one of the most trade dependent and wealthiest nations on earth, and it's home to some of the most profitable electronic enterprises, such as TSMC, which is a manufacturer of advanced semiconductors, and Foxconn, which is Apple's primary subcontractor for the iPhone. Some questions that we came up with were during the 1950s, what were the main components of Taiwan's economic policy? They were mostly agricultural and had very high import tariffs. How was their economic growth during the 1950s? They experienced low economic growth in the 1950s because of high tariffs and import restrictions. Some necessary changes were they had to transition from an open trade economy to advance economically. Another question was, why did Taiwan move from high tariffs and protectionism to an export-focused company? Taiwan shifted its approach because high tariffs and a strong currency had slowed growth. So it opened its trade to boost competitiveness and economic expansion. Why is Taiwan considered one of the biggest beneficiaries of globalization? Taiwan is a major beneficiary of globalization because trade and foreign investment transformed it from an agricultural economy into a high-income, high-tech powerhouse. And what risks might Taiwan face because it's so dependent on international trade? What we said was Taiwan's heavy dependence on international trade makes it vulnerable to global recessions and supply chain disruptions.
So the closing case, the global trade war in semiconductors. So the background was that they are essential and found in almost all modern electronics. Manufacturing migrated from America to Asia, Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan. And during COVID in 2019 and 2020, revenue was from 412 billion to 435 billion for home tech. And the semiconductors' importance was that governments outside the US offer financial incentives to chip makers, and fabrication facilities of TSMC costs were 19.5 billion in 2020. And they are now viewed as national security priority because of their role in military and cyber warfare.
For the US to China conflict, Trump prevented Chinese chipmakers from buying US manufacturing equipment without a license and blocks exports of semiconductor chips and tech to China. In response, China invested a lot of money so they could stop relying on other countries for semiconductor experts. The US was so scared China would take over TSMC, they created an act allowing for more chip factories and TSMC plants. The first question of the closing case was, why has chip manufacturing migrated to Asia? Has it been beneficial to American consumers and producers? So they moved to Asia because of reduced labor costs, technical expertise, and skilled workers, and the financial incentives being offered by Asia. This mainly benefited American consumers because of the decreased cost of electronics. However, the migration created concerns of national security and vulnerability because there was too much reliance on Asia for production.
The next question was, what trade theory would best explain the geography of the global chip industry prior to COVID-19? And the best explanation would be the new trade theory because it mainly focuses on things like economies of scale. So producing a high amount of chips in order to distribute the large costs that it takes to produce them. Also, first mover advantages, which is how the industry was born in the US in California, and a lot of the top firms today are still in the United States. And also imperfect competition. So there's a few dominant sellers, such as TSMC, which is the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, Samsung, Intel, and NVIDIA. The next one was, how did COVID-19 change supply and demand conditions in the semiconductor industry and what lessons were learned? So COVID-19 led to a big increase in demand for semiconductors because a lot of people were working from home and a lot of people had to do school from home. So people had a higher need for new technology. And this demand increased from 412 to $435 billion. But it also created a big disruption in the supply chain because there wasn't enough available. The demand for the semiconductors decreased a lot in 2022 because this big technology boom started to die down since COVID was coming to an end. And as a result of these disruptions, the industry really focuses now on the importance of having a really resilient supply chain that's centered around collaboration. And the goal of this is to aim to prevent shortages and also access production capacity in case of an issue like this again in the future.
The next question was, why did the Trump administration restrict chip exports to China? The Trump administration restricted chip exports to China mainly for national security reasons. Advanced chips were used in military technology and surveillance, so limiting access to prevent misuse. United States also wanted to maintain its leadership in advanced semiconductor technology and slow China's progress in cutting-edge chip production. While this protects U.S. strategic interests, it may push China to invest more in domestic chip production and become self-sufficient. The second to last question was, is Biden's CHIP Act good for producers, consumers, or national security? The CHIPS Act helps producers by providing subsidies that make it cheaper to build chip factories in the US and strengthen long-term competitiveness. For consumers, it improves supply stability and helps prevent shortages through prices, though prices may rise slightly in the short term. For national security, it reduces reliance on foreign manufacturing and secures access to critical technology. And our last question, how might US-China conflict shape the future of the semiconductor industry? The semiconductor supply chain may divide into competing geopolitical blocks. Governments will play a larger role, though, through subsidies, export control, and industrial policy. Production decisions may prioritize national security over cost efficiency. Reduced globalization could increase costs and reduce efficiency. Technological rivalry may accelerate innovation and strategic competition, and the global trade impact it has with gains from globalization may diminish, and the semiconductor industry may become less economically driven and more politically shaped.
All right. Thank you, Ritu. Good job. Let's take attendance now. So I'm giving a prompt. Okay. A lot of you say that that works. Fine. Good. Okay. Then we will have the chapter quizzes next week for chapter 5 and chapter 6. After the lecture at 3:50, I will open the quiz for you. You will have 10 minutes. All right. And then the test will have the same pattern, 40 questions. Yeah, sure. Anybody who wants to ask anything, they can stay, others can leave.